Have you ever been judged so harshly that someone literally struck you across the face? The digital clock above the concierge desk glowed at 4:47 p.m. Patricia Coleman's dinner reservation was in 2 hours and 13 minutes, but that timeline suddenly seemed meaningless as the sting of the hotel manager's hand still burned on her cheek. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The words had cut through the marble-lined Grandview Plaza Hotel lobby like a blade. I don't care what reservation you think you have. We don't serve your kind here. Edward Mitchell, the general manager, stood behind the mahogany reception desk, his face twisted with disgust as he stared down at Patricia. She had only asked about upgrading her room for her anniversary dinner. She wore simple jeans and a cashmere sweater. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth. To Mitchell, she looked like trouble from the moment she walked through the door. Without warning, his hand had shot out, the crack of the slap echoing through the suddenly silent lobby. The sting radiated across Patricia's cheek as she stood frozen in shock. Other guests gasped, phones appeared, recording. The humiliation burned hotter than the physical pain as she stood perfectly still, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break down. Have security remove this woman, Mitchell barked at his desk clerk, a nervous young man named Ramirez. She's disturbing our real guests. Patricia's anniversary dinner reservation was in just over 2 hours. Her husband Daniel would be meeting her at the hotel after his business meeting. She had planned everything meticulously, the surprise weekend getaway at what was supposed to be the city's finest hotel, the dinner at their acclaimed restaurant, the special gift she'd been saving for months to buy him. I'd like to speak with your manager, she said, her voice steady despite the humiliation and shock of being physically assaulted in public. Mitchell's laugh was sharp and cruel. Sweetheart, I am the manager. And you're trespassing. He turned to Ramirez. Call security. This person is disturbing our guests. The lobby had gone silent except for a few whispers and the soft click of phone cameras. Patricia's designer jeans clung uncomfortably to her legs as she stood rigid with shock. Her $600 sweater, an early anniversary gift from Daniel, suddenly felt like a costume, one that had failed to disguise her as someone worthy of basic human dignity in Edward Mitchell's eyes. Ma'am, this establishment has standards, Mitchell continued, his voice getting louder, performing for the growing audience. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the motel on 5th Street. They don't have a dress code there. A few guests snickered. Patricia caught sight of a young woman near the elevator, phone raised, live streaming the entire incident. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Oh my God, you guys. Are you seeing this? The woman whispered into her phone. This manager just slapped this woman for no reason. This is Jessica Parker. I live in the Grandview Plaza and this is absolutely insane. Patricia's phone buzzed with an incoming call, but she ignored it. She needed to handle this carefully. Every eye in the lobby was on her, every phone potentially recording. One wrong move and she'd be painted as the aggressor. Sir, I'm a paying customer, Patricia said, her voice carrying just enough to reach the phones recording her. I have a reservation and I'd like to check in. What you've done is assault, and it's a crime. Mitchell's face reddened. You have a reservation here? He gestured grandly at the opulent surroundings. Crystal chandeliers, marble columns, oil paintings worth more than most people's cars. Lady, do you see where you are? This isn't some budget motel. Behind Patricia, a security guard approached. She could feel his presence before she saw him, a large man in a crisp uniform, hand resting on his radio. Ma'am, the guard said, his voice deliberately intimidating. You're going to need to leave now. Patricia didn't turn around. She kept her eyes on Mitchell, noting how he straightened his shoulders, how his confidence grew with backup present. The man was a coward who needed an audience and protection to feel powerful. I'm not leaving until I speak with corporate, Patricia said, her hand gently touching her reddened cheek. This is assault. You struck me, a paying customer, in front of dozens of witnesses. Assault? Mitchell's laugh was theatrical now. I removed an unwelcome element from my establishment. You're lucky I don't have you arrested for trespassing. Patricia's jaw tightened. She could feel the heat of humiliation still burning on her face, both from the slap and from the degrading treatment. Jessica Parker's live stream was gaining viewers rapidly. Patricia could see the phone screen from the corner of her eye. 847 viewers and climbing. Comments were flooding in faster than Jessica could read them. This is disgusting, Jessica read aloud. Someone call corporate. Sue them. This is straight-up racism. The hashtag Grandview discrimination had started trending in the city. Patricia didn't know this yet, but the internet was already mobilizing on her behalf. Ramirez, the desk clerk, looked increasingly uncomfortable. Sir, maybe we should what? Mitchell snapped. Apologize to someone who clearly can't afford to be here? Look at her, Ramirez. Look at how she's dressed. Jeans in our lobby, he continued, gesturing at Patricia as if she were an exhibit. Next thing you know, we'll have the entire homeless population camping in our atrium. Patricia's phone buzzed again. This time, she glanced down. Daniel calling. She declined it. Not yet. The timing wasn't right. In her purse, barely visible, was her first-class boarding pass from earlier that day. Her Hermes phone case, a twin $800 piece of leather craftsmanship, showed no damage despite the assault. Most telling of all, the corner of her platinum American Express Centurion card peeked out from her wallet, the legendary black card that required a $5,000 initiation fee and a $10,000 annual fee with no preset spending limit. But Mitchell saw only what he wanted to see. A black woman in casual clothes who didn't belong in his pristine lobby. I'm calling the police, he announced, reaching for the phone. We have a trespasser who's refusing to leave and making threats. The security guard stepped closer. Patricia could smell his cologne, feel his breath on her shoulder. The intimidation was working exactly as intended, except Patricia Coleman had faced down boardrooms full of hostile executives. She'd negotiated $100 million deals while men questioned her right to be in the room. This was just another Tuesday. Ma'am, last warning, the guard said. Leave voluntarily or we'll have you removed. Patricia finally turned to face him. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe late 20s, with nervous eyes that kept darting to the phones recording everything. This wasn't his first rodeo with difficult situations, but it was probably his first time being live-streamed to thousands of people. Officer, Patricia said calmly, I'm attempting to check into a hotel room I paid for. This man physically assaulted me by slapping me across the face. I'm the victim here. Jessica's viewer count hit 2,300. The comments were getting angrier. Call the real police. This is assault. Get her a lawyer. The ACLU needs to see this. The clock read 4:52 p.m. 2 hours and 8 minutes until dinner. Patricia's phone buzzed a third time. Daniel again. This time, she noticed something else. A text message from her assistant, emergency board meeting moved to 5:15 p.m. All executives requested immediately. Interesting timing. Mitchell was now speaking into his phone, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Yes, I need police at the Grandview Plaza Hotel. We have a suspicious individual refusing to leave the premises. She's been asked multiple times. He paused, listening. Yes, she appears to be under the influence or mentally disturbed. Black female, mid-30s, causing a disturbance. Patricia almost smiled at that last part. Mentally disturbed. Yes, she was disturbed by the assault she'd just experienced and the blatant discrimination on display. The pieces were all in place now. The audience, the cameras, the witnesses, the paper trail of his own words. Patricia Coleman had spent 15 years climbing corporate ladders in boardrooms where she was the only woman, often the only person of color, always having to be twice as smart and 3 times as prepared. Today, she was prepared for everything. The police sirens were still distant when Assistant Manager Ramirez finally found his voice. "Sir, perhaps we should at least verify her reservation before the police arrive." Mitchell whirled on him. "Don't question my judgment, Ramirez. This woman is disrupting our business. Do you know what that costs us? Do you know what damage she's doing to our reputation just by standing there?" He gestured dramatically at Patricia. "This woman is damaging our hotel's image, and that's worth more than your annual salary." Patricia remained perfectly still, her cheeks still stinging from the slap. The mark was visible now, a red outline of Mitchell's hand. Each guest who noticed it visibly recoiled, their phones capturing the evidence of assault. Jessica Parker's live stream had exploded. Her viewer count climbed past 3,600 as she whispered urgent commentary into her phone. "The police are coming. This is absolutely insane. She literally just asked to check in and he slapped her across the face." The comment section moved too fast to read. "Record everything. Sue them into bankruptcy. Where is this hotel? Someone call the news. Hashtag justice for Patricia." Patricia's phone buzzed again. Daniel persistent as always. She glanced at the screen and saw not just his call, but a string of notifications. Her assistant, her lawyer, her head of security. The news was spreading beyond social media. "Ma'am," the security guard said, now standing directly behind her. "You have 30 seconds to leave voluntarily before the police arrive." Patricia turned slowly to face him. "Officer, what's your name?" The question caught him off guard. That's not relevant." "It's very relevant. When this goes to court, I'll need to know who to name in the lawsuit." Patricia's voice remained calm, professional. "Assault, false imprisonment, civil rights violations. Your name will be on those documents." The guard's confidence wavered. Patricia could see it in his eyes, the sudden realization that this wasn't going away quietly. Mitchell stepped around the desk, moving closer to Patricia. "Lady, you can threaten lawsuits all you want, but you're still trespassing in my lobby. Look around. Do you think any of these people believe you belong here?" He was right about one thing. The other guests were staring. An elderly white couple near the bar whispered and pointed. Two businessmen in expensive suits shook their heads in disgust. Whether at her or at Mitchell wasn't clear. "She's making a scene," one of them said loud enough to be heard. "Just call the police and be done with it." But not everyone agreed. A young mother near the elevator covered her daughter's eyes and shook her head in obvious disapproval. An older black gentleman in a perfectly tailored suit watched with barely contained anger, his phone also recording. The lobby had become a theater, and Patricia was center stage. Jessica's live stream count hit 4,800. She was practically hyperventilating with excitement and outrage. "You guys, this is going viral. Hashtag Grandview discrimination is trending. People are sharing this everywhere." Patricia finally answered her buzzing phone. "Hello, Daniel." "Patricia, where are you?" The board meeting got moved up. "We need," Daniel's voice carried clearly in the marble-lined space. "I'm still at the hotel," Patricia said loud enough for everyone to hear. "There's been a slight delay." "What kind of delay? You sound strange." "No, darling. I'm standing in the lobby with a red handprint on my face because the manager slapped me." The silence on the phone was deafening. In the lobby, Mitchell's face went from red to pale in seconds. "He did what?" Daniel's voice exploded from the speaker. "I'm afraid so. Your new general manager has quite the customer service approach." Mitchell's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "New? What did you say?" Patricia looked directly at him. "Oh, did I forget to mention? My husband, Daniel Coleman. You might know the name." Ramirez dropped his pen. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the sudden silence. "Coleman," he whispered. "Coleman Hospitality Group." "Oh my God." "Sir," Ramirez continued, his voice shaking, "Coleman Hospitality Group just acquired our parent company this morning. The color drained completely from Mitchell's face. Around the lobby, guests who knew the name started whispering urgently. Coleman Hospitality Group, the empire that owned over 500 hotels across 3 continents. Jessica's live stream went absolutely insane. Wait, what? She owns the hotel? Oh my god, you guys. Plot twist. The viewer count exploded past 7,000. Ma'am, the security guard said, his voice now uncertain. You should probably step away from my wife, came a new voice from the hotel entrance. Everyone turned. Daniel Coleman strode through the revolving doors followed by 3 men in expensive suits, lawyers by the look of them, and a woman Patricia recognized as the regional director of operations. Daniel was not a large man, but he carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who'd never had to raise his voice to be heard. He wore a simple gray suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, and his face was absolutely furious. "Mr. Coleman," Mitchell stammered. "I had no idea that your wife that I just assaulted my wife." Daniel's voice was ice cold. "No, I imagine you didn't." The police finally arrived, 2 officers who looked confused by the scene. Instead of one black woman causing trouble, they found a lobby full of well-dressed people, cameras everywhere, and obvious tension. "What seems to be the problem here?" the older officer asked. Mitchell tried to take control. "Officers, we have a trespasser who's been, the problem," Daniel interrupted, "is that your general manager just physically assaulted the co-owner of this hotel." Patricia pulled out her phone and showed the officers her call log. "I have 12 missed calls from our corporate team, 23 text messages, and about 5,000 people who just watched your employee slap me across the face." She gestured to Jessica, still live streaming. "Officer, this young woman has been broadcasting live for the past 15 minutes. The evidence is all there." The officer looked at Mitchell, then at Patricia's visibly reddened cheek, then at Daniel's obvious wealth and authority. His expression shifted. "Sir," he said to Mitchell, "did you strike this woman?" "It was just," she looked. Mitchell's composure was completely gone now. "How was I supposed to know?" he finally blurted out. "Know what?" Patricia asked quietly. "That I'm a human being who deserves basic respect." The second officer was already on his radio calling for a supervisor. This was way above their pay grade. Daniel moved to Patricia's side, gently touching her reddened cheek. "Darling, are you hurt?" "Just in pain and disappointed in the quality of management at our new property." "Our property?" the first officer asked. One of Daniel's lawyers stepped forward. "Coleman Hospitality Group completed acquisition of Grandview Plaza Hotels at 9 a.m. this morning. Mrs. Coleman is the co-owner and chief operating officer." Ramirez looked like he might faint. "Sir, does this mean," he began. "It means," Daniel said, looking directly at Mitchell, "that the man who just assaulted my wife is officially fired." The clock read 5:10 p.m. 1 hour and 50 minutes until dinner. Patricia's phone was buzzing constantly now. Social media notifications, news alerts, corporate messages, the story was everywhere. "Ma'am," the older police officer said respectfully, "would you like to press charges for assault?" Patricia looked at Mitchell, now sweating, pale, and obviously panicking. She looked at the crowd of guests, some still recording. She thought about the thousands of people watching live, the millions who would see this story. "Let's see how this plays out first," she said. But there was still one more secret she hadn't revealed. The most important one. Patricia felt calm despite the chaos around her. She'd faced discrimination before, the subtle kind, the kind that came with plausible deniability. The raised eyebrow when she presented her credentials. The surprise when she spoke with authority in meetings. The assumption that she was the assistant rather than the executive. But Mitchell's behavior had crossed into something different, something that couldn't be explained away or minimized. Something that needed to be addressed not just for her sake, but for everyone who might walk through these doors in the future. The mathematics of destruction were brutally simple. Mitchell had spent the afternoon humiliating, assaulting, and degrading the wife of his new boss. He'd done it in front of cameras, live streams, and witnesses. He'd done it deliberately, cruelly, and with obvious pleasure. He'd also done it to the woman who now owned the company that employed him. Everyone turned toward the entrance like synchronized dancers. Daniel Coleman strode through the revolving doors with the quiet authority of a man who'd never needed to raise his voice to command a room. Behind him followed 3 people in expensive suits, 2 lawyers and a woman Patricia recognized as the regional director of operations for Coleman Hospitality. Daniel wasn't physically imposing, but he carried himself with the understated power that came from controlling billion-dollar empires. His charcoal Armani suit probably cost more than most people's monthly salaries, and his face was carved from stone, cold, furious, and absolutely lethal. "Mr. Coleman," Mitchell stammered, his earlier bravado evaporating like morning mist. "I had absolutely no idea that you just physically assaulted my wife." Daniel's voice cut through the lobby like a scalpel. Each word was precisely articulated, deadly calm. "No, Edward, I imagine you didn't know that when you slapped the majority shareholder of your company." The lobby went silent, except for the soft sound of Patricia's breathing as she composed herself. Jessica's live stream count hit 9,000 viewers, the comments exploding so fast they became an illegible blur of outrage and amazement. Patricia watched Mitchell's face cycle through expressions: confusion, recognition, terror, and finally the dawning realization of complete and utter destruction. She'd seen that look before in boardrooms when executives realized they'd just made career-ending mistakes. "Officers," Mitchell said desperately to the police, "there's been a misunderstanding. This woman was trespassing, refusing to leave." "This woman," Daniel interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "is Patricia Coleman. She holds a doctorate in business administration from Stanford. She sits on the boards of 4 Fortune 500 companies, and as of this morning, she owns the building you're standing in." The second police officer looked confused. "Sir, can you verify that?" One of Daniel's lawyers, a sharp-faced woman with silver hair, stepped forward with a leather portfolio. "Officer, I'm Catherine Williams, senior partner at Williams & Associates. These are the acquisition documents filed with the SEC this morning." She handed over official papers bearing corporate seals and legal stamps. Coleman Hospitality purchased a controlling 67% stake in Grandview Plaza Hotels at exactly 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The transaction was worth $1.8 billion. Patricia reached into her purse and withdrew her own stack of documents. "Officer, here's my personal identification, corporate ID, and the signed authorization giving me full operational authority over all Coleman Hospitality properties." The older policeman examined the documents with growing amazement. These weren't fake papers or amateur forgeries. These were real corporate documents with official seals, SEC filing numbers, and the kind of legal language that came from billion-dollar transactions. "Ma'am, these appear completely legitimate," he said respectfully. "You're saying you own this hotel as of 9 a.m. this morning?" "Yes." The transition was scheduled to be announced Monday morning to prevent market disruption. "Unfortunately, Mr. Mitchell has forced us to accelerate our timeline rather dramatically." Ramirez looked like he might faint. His face had gone gray, and he was gripping the counter for support. "Mrs. Coleman, I am so incredibly sorry. If you had known what exactly?" Patricia asked quietly, her cheek still bearing the red imprint of Mitchell's hand. "That I was wealthy? That I owned the building? Does that change how a human being should be treated?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Ramirez opened his mouth, then closed it, realizing there was no good answer that wouldn't make him sound like a complete moral failure. Jessica's live stream had become a cultural phenomenon. The viewer count exploded past 12,000 as word spread across social media platforms. The comments were a waterfall of excitement and righteous fury. "She's the owner. Karma is real. He's so fired. Best plot twist ever. Justice for Patricia. This is better than Netflix." Mitchell tried desperately to salvage the situation. "Mrs. Coleman, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I thought you were, you looked like, your clothes, my clothes. Patricia looked down at her jeans and cashmere sweater. You mean these jeans that cost $600? This sweater that's handmade Italian cashmere worth $800? Or perhaps you're referring to my wedding ring? She held up her left hand, where a 5-carat diamond caught the light. This particular piece is worth about $175,000, more than most people make in 3 years. Daniel moved to Patricia's side, his expensive Italian leather shoes clicking sharply on the marble floor. Are you hurt, darling? Just in pain and deeply disappointed in the quality of management at our newest acquisition. The word resonated through the lobby like a gong. Several guests who'd been watching the spectacle began quietly moving toward the exits, suddenly uncomfortable with their earlier amusement at Patricia's humiliation. It was an accident, Mitchell said desperately, sweat now visible on his forehead despite the air conditioning. A misunderstanding. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to slap me across the face? Patricia's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. You didn't mean to call security to have me removed? You didn't mean to tell me I belonged in a motel? You didn't mean to suggest I was mentally disturbed? Daniel's face grew darker with each revelation. He said what? Oh, there's more, Patricia said, her voice carrying to every corner of the lobby. Ramirez, would you like to tell my husband what else Mr. Mitchell said about his wife, or shall I continue? Ramirez looked trapped between honesty and loyalty to his now obviously doomed supervisor. Sir, he hesitated, then straightened his shoulders. He said she was damaging the hotel's image. And he called the police saying she was mentally disturbed. Daniel turned to face Mitchell with the slow, deliberate movement of a predator selecting its prey. You slapped my wife. You called her mentally disturbed. You told her she belonged in a motel. You called the police on her for simply trying to check in. Each statement was delivered like a prosecutor reading formal charges. Anything else I should know about? Patricia glanced at Jessica, still live streaming to nearly 15,000 viewers. The story was trending on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok simultaneously. #Justice for Patricia was approaching 30,000 mentions. Oh yes, there's one more thing you should know about Mr. Mitchell's performance today. She paused deliberately, letting the tension build like a symphony approaching its crescendo. Daniel waited. The police officers waited. The entire lobby held its collective breath. Mr. Mitchell, Patricia said, looking directly at the man who'd humiliated her. Would you like to tell everyone what time the acquisition officially took place? Mitchell's face was now completely white, the color of old bone. 9 a.m. You said 9 a.m., exactly, which means that for the past 8 hours and 15 minutes, you've been working for my husband. Technically, you've been working for me. Patricia's voice remained perfectly calm, but satisfaction leaked through like sunlight through clouds. Which means you didn't just assault a random customer, Edward. You assaulted your boss's wife. The revelation hit the room like a physical shockwave. Ramirez actually staggered backward, gripping the marble counter so hard his knuckles went white. The security guard took several steps away from Patricia, as if proximity to her might somehow implicate him in Mitchell's catastrophic mistake. Jessica's livestream exploded into complete chaos. The viewer count rocketed past 18,000 as notifications flooded social media platforms. #Justice for Patricia was trending in 8 states. But wait, Patricia continued, her voice carrying the quiet satisfaction of someone about to deliver a killing blow. There's something else you all should know. Daniel smiled for the first time since arriving. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the expression of a shark that had just caught the scent of blood in the water. The lobby doors opened again, and more people entered. Patricia recognized the chairman of the board, 2 additional regional directors, and her own head of legal affairs. The cavalry had arrived, and they looked like they were prepared for war. Mr. Mitchell, Patricia said, her cheeks still red from the slap. I'd like you to meet your new CEO. Daniel stepped forward. I took over operational control of Grandview Plaza Hotels at exactly 9:01 a.m. this morning. The mathematics of destruction were brutally simple. Mitchell had spent the afternoon humiliating, assaulting, and degrading the wife of his new boss. He'd done it in front of cameras, live streams, and witnesses. He'd done it deliberately, cruelly, and with obvious pleasure. "So you see, Edward," Patricia said, her voice carrying to every corner of the now silent lobby. "When you slapped me, you weren't just assaulting a customer. You weren't just attacking a black woman who you thought couldn't fight back. You were committing assault and battery against your new owner and your new CEO's wife." Mitchell's knees buckled slightly. He reached for the counter to steady himself, his face now the color of ash. "Mrs. Coleman, please, I can explain." "Explain what exactly?" Daniel stepped forward, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "Explain how you thought it was acceptable to strike any human being. Explain your company's customer service philosophy. Explain how you represent the values of our organization." Catherine Williams, the lawyer, opened her portfolio and withdrew a thick document. "Mr. Mitchell, are you familiar with Section 12? 4 of your employment contract?" Mitchell's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "Section 12. 4, she continued in a voice that could cut glass, clearly states that any employee who commits assault against customers, vendors, or corporate officers is subject to immediate termination without severance, forfeiture of all benefits, and potential criminal prosecution." Patricia pulled out her phone and began reading from the screen. "Let me share some numbers with everyone here. Grandview Plaza Hotels, annual revenue of $1. 6 billion, 512 properties across 18 countries, 32,000 employees worldwide." She looked directly at Mitchell. "Your specific branch, Edward, generates $38 million in yearly revenue and employs 276 people. Do you know what discrimination and assault lawsuits cost the hospitality industry annually?" Mitchell shook his head weakly. $1. 2 billion per year in settlements, legal fees, and reputation damage." Patricia's voice carried the authority of someone who'd memorized corporate statistics like a general studying battlefield casualties. "The average settlement for racial discrimination and assault in hospitality is $600,000 per incident." The chairman of the board, a distinguished man in his 60s, stepped forward. "Mrs. Coleman, I want to personally apologize for this unconscionable behavior. We had no idea that your general manager assaults customers based on their appearance." Patricia interrupted. "That he makes assumptions about people's worth based on their clothing? That he calls human beings mentally disturbed and suggests they belong in motels?" She gestured to the live stream, still recording everything. "Gentlemen, 20,000 people have now witnessed this interaction. The video has been shared 12,000 times in the past 30 minutes. Our company's reputation is currently being destroyed in real time across every social media platform on Earth." Daniel pulled out his own phone and began reading corporate policy aloud. Policy 612, zero tolerance for bias-based customer refusal or mistreatment. Policy 734, immediate termination for any physical contact with guests without consent. Policy 891, criminal prosecution of employees who commit assault on company property. He looked up at Mitchell. "You violated 3 major corporate policies and committed multiple felonies. All in front of cameras, all recorded for posterity." The older police officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, do you want to press charges for assault and battery?" Patricia considered this carefully. She could feel the power in the room shifting, could sense the fear radiating from Mitchell and the nervous energy from the other employees. This was a teachable moment, not just for this hotel, but for the entire industry. "Officer, I want to do something more effective than just press charges," she said. "I want to make sure this never happens again to anyone, anywhere." She turned to address the growing crowd in the lobby. More hotel staff had appeared, drawn by the commotion. Guests were recording with their phones. Jessica's live stream had become a cultural phenomenon, approaching 25,000 viewers. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed today is a perfect example of how unconscious bias becomes conscious cruelty. Mr. Mitchell didn't assault me because I was breaking rules or causing trouble. He assaulted me because of what he assumed about me based on my appearance. Patricia's voice carried clearly throughout the lobby, amplified by the marble acoustics. He saw a black woman in casual clothes and decided I didn't belong in his pristine lobby. He made judgments about my worth, my character, and my right to be treated with basic human dignity. Mitchell tried one more desperate gambit. "Mrs. Coleman, I'm deeply sorry. It was a moment of poor judgment. I've been under tremendous stress with the merger rumors, and stress." Daniel's voice cracked like a whip. "Stress made you slap my wife across the face. Stress made you call her mentally disturbed. What kind of stress could possibly justify assault?" Patricia held up her hand for silence. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to give you two choices." Mitchell's face showed a flicker of hope. "Choice number 1, immediate resignation, forfeiture of all benefits, signed admission of wrongdoing, and participation in a company-wide video about unconscious bias. You'll also personally fund diversity training for every employee in this hotel." "And choice number 2?" Mitchell asked, his voice barely audible. "Choice number 2, criminal prosecution for assault and battery, civil lawsuit for discrimination and intentional infliction of emotional distress, public termination for cause, and a lifetime ban from working in the hospitality industry." Patricia's voice was steady as granite. "I have the resources, the evidence, and the motivation to ensure you never work again." The lobby was so quiet that the sound of the fountain in the corner seemed deafening. Furthermore, Daniel added, "We'll be implementing immediate changes. Every employee in this hotel will complete 40 hours of bias recognition training within the next 30 days. We're installing an anonymous reporting system for discriminatory behavior, and we're establishing a $1.5 million fund for discrimination prevention and victim compensation." Catherine Williams stepped forward with another document. "We're also implementing real-time monitoring of customer interactions, quarterly bias audits by third-party firms, and linking all staff bonuses directly to inclusion metrics." Patricia looked around the lobby at the faces watching her. Some ashamed, some supportive, some still recording. Power isn't about having resources. Power is about using those resources to ensure that what happened to me today never happens to anyone else. The clock read 5:32 p.m. 28 minutes until dinner. Patricia turned to Daniel and whispered something in his ear. He nodded and turned to address the staff. "We believe in second chances and growth opportunities," he announced. "But we also believe in consequences. Mr. Mitchell's actions today cannot be excused or overlooked. The message needs to be clear: this behavior will not be tolerated in our organization." Ramirez, who had been silent throughout the confrontation, finally spoke. "Mrs. Coleman, if I may, what happens to the rest of us?" Patricia studied the young man's face. He looked terrified, but also genuinely remorseful. "Mr. Ramirez, you didn't slap me. You suggested verifying my reservation. You'll be promoted to interim general manager while we search for Mr. Mitchell's replacement." Relief flooded Ramirez's features. "Thank you, ma'am. I promise you won't regret this decision." "Don't thank me yet," Patricia said. "You'll be personally responsible for implementing every single reform we've discussed. Your performance will be evaluated based on how successfully you transform the culture of this hotel. Failure is not an option." Daniel looked at his watch. "Patricia, we need to get ready for dinner." But first, he turned to face Mitchell one final time. "Mr. Mitchell, you have 60 seconds to decide. Resignation or prosecution. Choose now." Mitchell looked around the lobby desperately, as if someone might offer him a lifeline. But he was completely alone, surrounded by witnesses to his cruelty, recorded by dozens of cameras, and facing the full power of a billion-dollar corporation that he had just personally insulted. I choose to resign," he whispered. "Excellent choice," Patricia said. "Security will escort you to collect your personal items immediately. Your personal belongings will be shipped to you. Do not contact any current employees. Do not attempt to return to any company property, and do not speak to the media without legal counsel present." She turned to the police officers. "Gentlemen, I won't be pressing charges today, but I want a full report filed documenting this incident. If Mr. Mitchell violates any terms of his resignation agreement, I reserve the right to pursue all available legal remedies. The livestream count had reached 30,000 viewers. Hashtag Justice for Patricia was trending nationwide. The story was being picked up by major news networks, business publications, and social justice organizations. Patricia had transformed a moment of personal humiliation into a catalyst for systemic change. She'd used her power not for revenge, but for reform, not for destruction, but for reconstruction. But she wasn't finished yet. The security escort of Edward Mitchell was swift and humiliating. 2 guards flanked him as he walked through the same lobby where he'd held absolute power just hours earlier. His head was down, shoulders slumped, the picture of complete defeat. Guests and staff watched in silence as the man who'd slapped Patricia across the face was marched out the front doors like a common criminal. Jessica's livestream captured every second, the viewer count now approaching 35,000. The comments were a river of satisfaction and vindication. Karma delivered. Justice served cold. Don't mess with queens. This is how change happens. Patricia stood in the center of the lobby, radiating quiet power. The contrast was remarkable. From humiliated victim to triumphant reformer in less than an hour, she'd transformed personal assault into corporate revolution. "Mr. Ramirez," Daniel said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "You're now the interim general manager. Your first task is to personally apologize to every guest who witnessed this incident and offer them complimentary accommodations." Ramirez nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. Immediately, sir." "Your second task," Patricia continued, "is to call an all-staff meeting for tomorrow morning. Every employee, housekeeping, front desk, security, management, kitchen staff, everyone will attend mandatory bias recognition training starting Monday." Catherine Williams opened her briefcase and withdrew a thick manual. "This is the Coleman Hospitality Dignity and Respect Protocol. Every hotel in our chain will implement these standards within 60 days. Mr. Ramirez, you have the honor of being our pilot location." Patricia walked to the front desk, her stride confident despite the lingering sting on her cheek. She pulled out her phone and began scrolling through real-time data that her corporate team was feeding her. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced to the lobby, her voice carrying clearly, "I want to share some immediate results of today's incident. In the past hour, this hotel's online reviews have dropped from 4.5 stars to 2.3 stars. We've received over 2,000 negative comments across all platforms." The assembled staff looked stricken. Patricia continued reading from her phone. "However, we've also received over 10,000 messages of support for implementing change. Reservation requests for next month are up 32% from people who specifically want to stay at the hotel where justice was served." She looked up at the crowd. "Do you understand what this means? People don't want to stay at hotels where discrimination is tolerated, but they're eager to support businesses that take concrete action against bias." Daniel moved to the hotel's computer system behind the front desk. "Mr. Ramirez, I'm implementing several immediate changes to your operations." His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as he spoke. "First, we're installing an anonymous reporting app that allows any employee to report discriminatory behavior in real time. Reports go directly to corporate headquarters, bypassing local management entirely." Patricia's assistant, who had arrived during the confrontation, handed her a tablet showing live social media analytics. "Ma'am, hashtag Justice for Patricia has been mentioned over 75,000 times in the past hour. Major news networks are requesting interviews. The story is trending in 18 countries." Patricia studied the data with satisfaction. "Mr. Ramirez, you're about to become the most famous hotel manager in America. I hope you're ready for the responsibility." Ramirez straightened his shoulders. "Ma'am, I won't let you down. I promise." "Don't promise me," Patricia said firmly. "Promise every guest who walks through those doors that they'll be treated with dignity regardless of their appearance, their accent, their clothing, or their skin color." Daniel pulled up the hotel's financial dashboard on the computer screen, turning it so everyone could see. Second change, starting immediately, all staff bonuses and performance reviews will include bias metrics. Treating guests with equal respect isn't just morally right, it's now financially rewarded. Patricia walked to where Jessica was still live streaming, her phone aimed at the ongoing transformation. Jessica, isn't it? The young woman nodded, starstruck. Yes, ma'am. Jessica Parker. I can't believe I captured all of this. You did more than capture it. You amplified it. Your live stream turned a single incident into a global conversation about dignity and justice. Patricia looked directly into the camera. Ladies and gentlemen watching, this is what accountability looks like. This is how we create change. She turned back to address the hotel staff who had gathered in a semicircle around the front desk. I want every one of you to understand something crucial. What happened here today wasn't just about one manager's prejudice. It was about a system that allowed that prejudice to flourish unchecked. A young housekeeper raised her hand tentatively. Ma'am, what if we see discrimination, but we're afraid to report it? Patricia smiled at her. The first genuine smile since the assault. What's your name? Maria Gonzalez, ma'am. Maria, that's exactly why we're implementing the anonymous reporting system. No one should fear retaliation for standing up for what's right. In fact, employees who report discriminatory behavior will receive recognition and financial incentives. Daniel pulled out his phone and made a call. Legal department, I need you to draft an immediate policy change. All Coleman hospitality properties will implement mandatory bias training, anonymous reporting systems, and diversity metrics for performance reviews. I want this rolled out to all 500 hotels within 6 months. Patricia's corporate communications director approached with an urgent expression. Ma'am, we have interview requests from CNN, NBC, ABC, The Today Show, and 47 other media outlets. How would you like to handle the press? Patricia considered this carefully. Schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning right here in this lobby. I want to announce our comprehensive discrimination prevention initiative while standing in the exact spot where I was assaulted. She looked around the transformed lobby. Staff members who had been hostile or indifferent an hour ago now looked at her with respect and admiration. Guests who had initially been entertained by her humiliation now seemed ashamed and supportive. Mr. Ramirez, I want you to personally ensure that every employee understands our new zero-tolerance policy. Any physical contact with guests without consent results in immediate termination and criminal prosecution. Any discriminatory behavior results in mandatory retraining and potential dismissal. Ramirez nodded vigorously. Understood completely, ma'am. Patricia touched her cheek, which still showed a faint red mark. I also want you to establish a guest dignity fund. Any customer who experiences discrimination at any Coleman hospitality property will receive immediate compensation and a personal apology from senior management. Catherine Williams handed Patricia a legal document. Mrs. Coleman, we've prepared a dignity and respect charter that will be displayed prominently in every hotel lobby. It explicitly guarantees equal treatment regardless of race, appearance, economic status, or any other characteristic. Patricia signed the document with a flourish, then handed the pen to Daniel, who added his signature. This charter becomes corporate policy immediately. Mr. Ramirez, I want this framed and mounted behind your front desk by tomorrow morning. The clock read 6:05 p.m., 55 minutes until dinner. Patricia looked around the lobby one final time, taking in the scene of transformation. The red mark on her cheek still stung, a reminder of the assault she'd endured. But now that same lobby had become the birthplace of systemic change. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced to everyone present. What you've witnessed today is proof that dignity and intelligence can triumph over prejudice and cruelty. Not through violence, not through destruction, but through strategic action and unwavering principle. She turned to Daniel. I need to freshen up before dinner. And after today's events, I'd say we have quite a lot to celebrate. Daniel smiled, his earlier fury now replaced with pride. Mr. Ramirez, please have a bottle of Dom Perignon sent up to the presidential suite immediately, and make sure we have the best table available in your restaurant tonight. My wife and I are celebrating our anniversary." As they walked toward the elevator, Daniel gently placed his arm around Patricia's shoulders. "Are you really all right?" he asked quietly, once they were out of earshot. Patricia took a deep breath. "I've been through worse. But this time, I had the power to do something about it." "You always had that power," Daniel replied. "That's why I fell in love with you 15 years ago." The elevator doors closed behind them, leaving the lobby buzzing with activity as staff scrambled to implement the new directives. Ramirez was already organizing the all-hands meeting for the following morning. The security team was reviewing protocols for identifying and preventing discriminatory incidents. The front desk staff was preparing to apologize to every guest who had witnessed the confrontation. Jessica Parker had finally ended her live stream after nearly an hour of continuous broadcasting. Her phone was overheating from the constant use, and her arms were tired from holding it up. But she felt like she had participated in something historic, a rare moment when justice was not only served but served immediately and with lasting impact. Upstairs in the presidential suite, Patricia stood in front of the bathroom mirror, examining the red mark on her cheek. It was already beginning to fade, but the memory of the slap, the sound it made, the shock of the impact, the humiliation that followed, would stay with her much longer. "We should press charges," Daniel said from the doorway, watching her with concern. "What he did was criminal. He shouldn't just lose his job, he should face legal consequences." Patricia turned to face her husband. "Remember what we always say about business strategy?" Daniel smiled. "Sometimes the best move isn't the most obvious one." "Exactly. If we press charges, Mitchell becomes a martyr for people who think like him. The story becomes about one bad apple being punished. But what we're doing instead is changing the entire system," Daniel finished. "Making it impossible for the next Edward Mitchell to do what he did to you." Patricia nodded. "The dignity charter, the anonymous reporting, the bias training, the performance metrics, those will affect thousands of employees and millions of guests. That's a much better use of our resources than putting one prejudiced man in jail." Daniel handed her a glass of champagne. "To my brilliant, strategic, and incredibly forgiving wife." Patricia took the glass but shook her head. "I'm not forgiving him. I'm choosing to channel my anger into something more productive than revenge." "That's what makes you the better CEO," Daniel said with a smile. "You always see the bigger picture." Patricia took a sip of champagne, then set down the glass. "I need to make a call before dinner." She pulled out her phone and dialed a familiar number. When the call connected, she said, "Marcus, it's Patricia Coleman. I need you to accelerate Project Dignity." "Yes, immediately. The hotel incident today proved we can't wait any longer." Daniel raised an eyebrow questioningly. Patricia ended the call and turned to her husband. "Remember that foundation I've been planning? The one focused on combating workplace discrimination? The one you've been working on for the past year?" "Of course. Well, I just decided to launch it tomorrow at the press conference." Nothing motivates donors like a viral story of injustice followed immediately by concrete action. Daniel laughed. "You're turning your own assault into a fundraising opportunity for anti-discrimination work. That's brilliant." "It's strategic," Patricia corrected. "The foundation was always going to launch eventually. This just gives us a compelling origin story and immediate media attention." She walked to the closet where her luggage had been delivered earlier. From her suitcase, she withdrew a small black dress that would be perfect for an anniversary dinner. "What do you think the hashtag count is up to now?" Daniel asked, checking his own phone. "My assistant says hashtag Justice for Patricia has been used over 200,000 times in the past 2 hours. We're the top trending topic nationwide." Daniel shook his head in amazement. "When you checked in today, did you ever imagine this would happen?" Patricia laughed. "Absolutely not. I expected to surprise you with a romantic dinner, exchange anniversary gifts, and spend a quiet evening together. Instead, I got assaulted, fired a hotel manager, implemented company-wide policy changes, and launched a foundation. Just another day in the life of Patricia Coleman, Daniel said with a grin. Changing the world one slap at a time. Patricia winced. Too soon. Sorry, Daniel said quickly. Bad joke. Are you sure you're up for dinner? We could order room service instead. Patricia shook her head firmly. Absolutely not. I refuse to let Edward Mitchell's actions dictate my evening. We're going to have our anniversary dinner exactly as planned. The only difference is that now, everyone in the restaurant will know exactly who I am. At 7 p.m. exactly, Patricia and Daniel Coleman sat at the best table in the Grandview Plaza Hotel restaurant. Patricia wore an elegant black dress, dignified and powerful. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, covering the last traces of the red mark on her cheek. The transformation was complete. Ramirez himself served their anniversary dinner, his movements careful and respectful. Every staff member who approached their table did so with genuine warmth rather than the calculated servility that wealth usually commanded. Word had spread through the hotel like wildfire. This was the woman who had changed everything. Jessica Parker's live stream had ended at 38,000 viewers, but the video clips were circulating endlessly across every social platform. #Justice for Patricia had reached 300,000 mentions worldwide. Major news networks had picked up the story. Business schools were already requesting permission to use the incident as a case study in crisis management and corporate reform. You know what the most remarkable part of today was? Daniel asked, raising his wine glass. The look on Mitchell's face when he realized he'd assaulted his new boss's wife? Patricia laughed. No. The fact that you never raised your voice, never lost your composure, never let anger control your actions. You turned humiliation into transformation through pure strategic thinking. Patricia smiled. Power isn't about having resources, darling. It's about using them wisely and with purpose. Around them, other diners pretended not to stare, but it was obvious they recognized the couple from the incident earlier, or from the viral videos that were now spreading across the internet. A few even surreptitiously took photos, which would only further amplify the story. To 15 years of marriage, Daniel said, raising his glass again. And to many more years of watching you change the world. Patricia clinked her glass against his. To 15 years of partnership. I couldn't do any of this without you standing beside me. As they enjoyed their anniversary dinner, Patricia's phone continued to buzz with notifications. Social media mentions, news alerts, corporate messages, the story was everywhere. But for these 2 hours, she had decided to focus solely on her husband and their celebration. The world could wait until tomorrow. The next morning, the lobby of the Grandview Plaza Hotel had been transformed. The mahogany check-in desk gleamed under the crystal chandeliers, and directly behind it hung a large, beautifully framed document, the Coleman Hospitality Dignity and Respect Charter. The marble floors had been polished to a mirror shine, and hotel staff moved with renewed purpose, each wearing a new pin that read Dignity First. News vans lined the street outside. Reporters jockeyed for position in the designated press area. Camera crews set up equipment, preparing for the 10 a.m. press conference that had been announced just hours earlier. Hotel security, now under new leadership, maintained a respectful but firm perimeter. Patricia stood in the presidential suite, reviewing her notes one final time. She wore a tailored navy suit that projected both authority and approachability, a deliberate choice for the cameras that would soon broadcast her image around the world. The foundation announcement is ready, her assistant confirmed. The website goes live the moment you make the announcement. Daniel adjusted his tie in the mirror. The board unanimously approved the $25 million initial funding. Impressive, considering half of them were asleep when we called the emergency meeting last night. Patricia smiled. Nothing motivates corporate executives like potential PR disasters and viral videos of discrimination. A knock at the door announced the arrival of Catherine Williams with a stack of documents. Mrs. Coleman, We've prepared everything for the official filing of the Coleman Foundation for Workplace Dignity. The paperwork is ready for your signature." Patricia signed where indicated, officially bringing the foundation into existence. "How many employees have signed up for the first training session?" 100% participation, Catherine replied with satisfaction. Mr. Ramirez made it clear that this wasn't optional. Patricia nodded. "And the anonymous reporting system?" "Already functional. We received our first report at 6:15 this morning, a housekeeper reporting inappropriate comments from a maintenance worker. Ramirez has already addressed it." At 9:45 a.m., Patricia and Daniel took the elevator down to the lobby. The doors opened to reveal a completely different atmosphere from the previous day. Staff members stood tall, greeting them with genuine respect. Guests watched with interest, recognizing the couple from news reports and social media. Ramirez approached immediately. "Mrs. Coleman, everything is prepared for the press conference. We've arranged seating for 150 journalists and set up live streaming capabilities for those who couldn't be accommodated in person." "Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. How are the staff adjusting to the new protocols?" "Remarkably well, ma'am. I believe yesterday's incident made an impression on everyone. Nobody wants to be the next Edward Mitchell." Patricia nodded. "And how are you feeling about your new role?" Ramirez straightened his shoulders. "Honored and determined, ma'am. I spent most of the night studying the Dignity Protocol Manual. I'm committed to making this hotel a model of inclusive excellence." At exactly 10 a.m., Patricia stepped up to the podium that had been set up in the exact spot where she had been slapped less than 24 hours earlier. The symmetry wasn't lost on anyone present. Cameras flashed and video rolled as she faced the assembled press. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and strong. "My name is Patricia Coleman. Yesterday afternoon, I entered this hotel as a customer looking to check in for my anniversary celebration. I was physically assaulted by the general manager because he made assumptions about my worth based on my appearance." She paused, allowing the words to settle across the room. What followed was a revelation, not just that I happened to be the new co-owner of this establishment, but that such treatment is experienced by countless individuals every day who don't have the resources or platform to demand justice. The cameras captured every word, broadcasting to millions worldwide. "Today, I stand before you not as a victim seeking sympathy, but as a business leader announcing concrete action. Coleman Hospitality Group is implementing immediate and far-reaching changes across all 512 of our properties worldwide." Patricia outlined the new initiatives: mandatory bias training, anonymous reporting systems, performance metrics tied to inclusivity, and financial incentives for staff who exemplified the dignity standards. "But we're not stopping there," she continued. "Today, I'm announcing the formation of the Coleman Foundation for Workplace Dignity, with initial funding of $25 million. This foundation will work with businesses across industries to implement similar protections for employees and customers, conduct research on best practices, and provide legal support for victims of workplace discrimination." The announcement generated a buzz among the journalists. This was bigger than they had anticipated, not just a reaction to one incident, but the launch of a national movement. "I want to be clear," Patricia said, her voice growing more passionate. "What happened to me yesterday was not exceptional. It was exceptional only in that I had the resources and position to immediately address it. Millions of people face similar treatment every day in hotels, restaurants, retail establishments, and workplaces. The only difference is that most of them don't suddenly reveal themselves to be the owners." She gripped the edges of the podium, her expression intense. "So I ask myself, what is my responsibility now? To simply fire one manager and move on? Or to use this moment, this attention, this platform to create lasting change?" The room was absolutely silent. Even the most cynical journalists were captivated by her words. "The slap I received yesterday left a mark that faded within hours. But the systematic discrimination that permeates our society leaves scars that last lifetimes. It's not enough to address individual incidents. We must transform the systems that allow such incidents to occur." Questions from journalists followed, and Patricia answered each one with clarity and purpose. Yes, Edward Mitchell had resigned. No, she wasn't pressing criminal charges. Yes, all 276 employees at this location would undergo immediate training. No, this wasn't just a PR move. The $25 million foundation commitment proved their seriousness. When asked if she had a message for Mitchell, Patricia's answer surprised many. I hope he uses this experience to reflect and grow. My goal isn't to destroy his life, but to ensure he never treats another human being that way again. Sometimes the most powerful lessons come from our most humiliating mistakes. The press conference concluded after 45 minutes, but its impact was just beginning. Clips spread across social media platforms, amplifying the message far beyond the journalists present. #DignityFirst joined #Justice for Patricia as trending topics nationwide. As Patricia and Daniel walked away from the podium, hotel employees lined up to applaud. Not the forced, obligatory applause of subordinates, but genuine appreciation for leadership that transformed humiliation into meaningful change. Mrs. Coleman called a voice from the crowd. It was Maria Gonzalez, the housekeeper who had asked about reporting discrimination. Thank you for making us feel safe. Patricia stopped to speak with her. Maria, you and your colleagues are the heart of this hotel. Your dignity matters just as much as any guests or executives. Back in the presidential suite, Patricia finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She sank onto the sofa, exhaustion washing over her. Do you think it will make a difference? She asked Daniel, her public persona giving way to private doubt. Daniel sat beside her, taking her hand in his. Look at what you've already accomplished in less than 24 hours. The training program, the reporting system, the foundation, these aren't symbolic gestures. They're structural changes that will affect thousands of lives. But it's just one hotel chain, Patricia sighed. What about all the other businesses where this happens every day? That's why you created the foundation, Daniel reminded her. To scale these solutions across industries. And with the media coverage we're getting, other companies will face pressure to adopt similar measures. Patricia's phone chimed with an alert. Her assistant had sent a message. Competitor hotel chains Marriott and Hilton just announced they're reviewing their anti-discrimination policies in light of this morning's press conference. She showed the message to Daniel, who smiled. See? It's already working. You're creating a competitive advantage out of ethical treatment. When treating people with dignity becomes good business, change happens faster. 3 months later, Patricia stood at another podium, this time addressing the National Conference on Workplace Equity in Washington, D.C. Behind her, a large screen displayed the Coleman Foundation's first quarterly impact report. 827 businesses had adopted the Dignity Protocol. 142,000 employees had completed bias training. 1,287 discrimination incidents had been reported through anonymous systems. 89% of those incidents had been successfully resolved. Employee satisfaction scores had improved by an average of 27% at participating businesses. The business case for dignity is clear, Patricia told the audience of executives, policymakers, and advocates. Companies that implement these protocols are seeing higher employee retention, improved customer satisfaction, and decreased liability costs. But the numbers didn't tell the full story. Patricia invited Maria Gonzalez to the stage, the housekeeper from the Grandview Plaza who had been promoted to Dignity Coordinator after demonstrating exceptional leadership during the transition. Before the incident with Mrs. Coleman, I was afraid to speak up when I saw discrimination, Maria told the audience. Now I lead a team that ensures everyone's voice is heard. The culture has completely transformed. We're not just enforcing rules, we're building a community where respect is the foundation of every interaction. Edward Mitchell had also undergone a transformation, though of a different kind. After his resignation, he'd struggled to find employment in the hospitality industry. His name and face had become synonymous with discrimination thanks to Jessica Parker's viral livestream. In a surprising turn of events, Mitchell had reached out to Patricia 6 weeks after the incident, asking for a meeting. Against Daniel's advice, she had agreed. They met at a small coffee shop far from the Grandview Plaza. Mitchell was a changed man, humbled, reflective, clearly carrying the weight of his actions. "I've had a lot of time to think," he told Patricia, unable to meet her eyes at first. "What I did to you was inexcusable. I've been examining my biases, my assumptions, the way I've treated people throughout my career." Patricia listened without interrupting. "I'm not asking for my job back," Mitchell continued. "I'm asking for a chance to be part of the solution instead of the problem." After careful consideration, Patricia had offered Mitchell a position, not in hotel management, but as a speaker for the Foundation's training program. Who better to explain the consequences of discrimination than someone who had experienced them firsthand? Now, Mitchell traveled to businesses across the country, sharing his story as a cautionary tale. "I lost everything because I made a split-second judgment based on appearance," he would tell audiences of managers and executives. "Don't make my mistake." The Grandview Plaza Hotel, under Ramirez's leadership, had become the flagship property of Coleman Hospitality Group. Its occupancy rates had reached record highs as customers specifically requested to stay at the Dignity Hotel. The framed charter behind the front desk had become a tourist attraction in its own right, with guests taking selfies beside the document that had launched a movement. Jessica Parker's impromptu live stream had led to a career change as well. She'd been hired by the Coleman Foundation as their social media director, using her platform to amplify stories of workplace transformation across the country. 1 year to the day after the slap that changed everything, Patricia and Daniel returned to the Grandview Plaza for their anniversary dinner. The restaurant manager, a new hire who had completed the industry's most rigorous bias training program, greeted them warmly. "Mrs. Coleman, Mr. Coleman, welcome back. Your usual table is ready." They were escorted to the same table where they had celebrated the previous year, just hours after the incident. But this time, there was an addition, a small plaque on the wall beside their table that read, "At this table on October 12th, the Dignity Movement began." Patricia ran her fingers over the engraved words. "From crisis to catalyst," she murmured. "You've always had that gift," Daniel said. "Turning obstacles into opportunities." After dinner, they walked through the lobby one last time before heading up to their suite. The space had been physically transformed, not just with the framed charter, but with subtle design elements that emphasized inclusion. Photographs on the walls showcased diverse guests and staff. Seating areas were arranged to accommodate people with different needs and abilities. Signage appeared in multiple languages. But the most significant change wasn't visible, it was in the atmosphere, the way staff interacted with guests and each other. There was an authenticity to the warmth, a genuine commitment to seeing and valuing each person who entered the space. As they waited for the elevator, an elderly couple approached Patricia tentatively. "Excuse me," the woman said. "Aren't you the lady from the Dignity video? The one who got slapped?" Patricia smiled. "Yes, that's me. I just want to thank you," the woman continued. "My granddaughter works at a hotel in Phoenix that adopted your program. She says it changed everything. She's not afraid to go to work anymore." Patricia felt tears threatening to form. These were the moments that mattered most, not the press conferences or the speaking engagements, but the individual lives transformed by systemic change. "That means more to me than you know," Patricia replied, squeezing the woman's hand. Later, in the privacy of their suite, Patricia stood by the window overlooking the city lights. 1 year, she reflected. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Mitchell had just checked me in normally." Daniel joined her at the window. The foundation wouldn't exist. The Dignity Protocol wouldn't be industry standard. Thousands of employees wouldn't have the protections they have now. So in a strange way, that slap was a gift, Patricia mused. Not just to me, but to everyone who's benefited from what came after. A painful gift, Daniel amended. But yes. Sometimes transformation requires disruption. Patricia turned from the window, facing her husband. "So what's next? We've changed one industry. Where do we go from here?" Daniel smiled. "Knowing you, everywhere. Retail. Healthcare. Education. You won't stop until dignity becomes the default in every workplace in America. Patricia nodded, already formulating strategies in her mind. The slap had been just the beginning, a single moment that revealed how much work remained to be done. But it had also revealed her purpose, her mission, the legacy she would build. Everyone deserves to be seen, she said softly. Really seen, not through the lens of assumption or bias, but for who they truly are. The red mark on her cheek had faded long ago, but its impact continued to ripple outward, touching lives across the country. From crisis had come catalyst, from humiliation, transformation, from a single act of cruelty, a movement of compassion. That was the true power of dignity, not just to heal wounds, but to prevent them from being inflicted in the first place. Not just to respond to injustice, but to create systems where justice was the norm. Tomorrow, Patricia would continue building that world. But tonight, she would celebrate how far they'd already come. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.